Hello, my friends. I'm Yevgen Karas. I'm an officer of Ukrainian military unit, and now I'm on positions of Russian forces which were captured by Ukrainian infantry. It was disastrous assault operations, and nobody believe that in 21st century anybody can disrupt such huge and deeply established defense line with minefields, with multiple enemy support combat units like artillery, air force, tanks. But anyway, Ukrainian infantry now are not here. They go forward, I think 4 kilometers. Why I want to describe the situation to you, to our foreign partners, friends, people of Ukrainian nation who spread through the world. Because now it's too many manipulations about the perspectives of war, perspectives of Ukrainian advance, and many talks about that we need to have peace and with Russia, because there is no chance to go forward to get a justice, to get a punishment of this tragedy and genocide which caused Russians to Ukrainian and to the whole civilized world. What you need to understand now: Ukrainian counterintelligence operation now is working on 4 directions. We have Dnieper River. Here we have a Crimea. Oh, that's also Russian camouflage. It's occupied by dirty shit. It's occupied Crimea. Then here we have Dnieper River, and on left bank of this river, as we know from the journalists, from the Russians, we now have two positions which Ukrainian special forces, Ukrainian militaries deliberated, and from these positions can be upgraded our assault opportunities on the left bank. It was a big tragedy to Russian forces, so they sent to this direction newly formed 17th division of armed forces of Russia, which were enlisted for the reserve of Russian HQ and their general staff, and they were sent to the left bank of Dnieper River because they are scared that we will go there in attack. And what is interesting from that direction, it's called like a group of army Dnieper. They send the forces here, Crimea, left bank of Dnieper, group of forces Dnieper. They send an army to the group of forces Vostok East. This group of forces Vostok East is much more powerful than group of work Dnieper. Why they need to send the 17th newly division to upgrade their defense on that? But from this direction, they send 34th brigade from the 49th Russian army. They sent 34th brigade to the Zaporizhia. So we see a little panic because they send the forces from the Dnieper to the Zaporizhia district, and now they send from the general staff reserve to the Zaporizhia. And we see that they are now enabled to protect all their lines by units which were established there for a great period of time. In Zaporizhia we have 3 directions of attack. First is the Zaporizhia city. It's closest to the Azov Sea, closest to the Crimea. It's so-called direction on Vasilivka. It's most difficult fights. Our guys also for 2 months fighting there from my unit, my regiment, and this is most terrible direction because they are mostly fortificated, and because there will be Vasilivka military air base with Russian helicopters, so they need to defend it very good. Middle direction is Robotine. You maybe heard it about some from news, because it's the popular in news fightings for the Robotine. It's very hard fightings, and you maybe see some photos of Ukrainian damaged vehicles from the Western countries, Bradley tanks, Leopards. Robotine now is hard fighting, but Ukrainians have some successful operations there, and Russians need to get more and more reinforcements there, but they cannot establish situation as they cannot stop Ukrainian advance. Robotino is direction to the Tokmak city. It maybe will be their last greatly fortified zone, city, and after Tokmak, after we will deliberate Robotino and the front line in this area, they will, because Robotino is their almost main line of defense. So why is so hard fighting? Because if Ukrainian will success in this direction, so there will be only question of time when Ukrainian forces will go to the operative level, not tactical, not maybe some 5-10 kilometers, but we are talking about 30-40 kilometers size operations, because when we disrupt Russian main defense line, they will have some panic, they will have some disorganization, then Ukrainian will, as we understand, send some airborne troops, some special troops, and they will use the situation about broken Russian defense line to make a broad operation behind the enemy line. And the third direction is most interesting, is closest to the Mariupol. It's so-called direction to the Volnovakha, Mariupol, or Berdyansk, is Velika Novosilka, and southern now is heavy fighting for the Staromayorsk, and closest to the Staromlinivka. These names of cities and villages, not talking to you more big information, but what is important, from the beginning of Ukrainian assault operation, Ukrainians pushed Russian forces to the south, to the sea, from the Velika Novosilka, third direction of attack, maybe I think almost 10 kilometers. And why this is important? As I talk, we have Kherson direction of attack, we have direction of attack in Zaporizhia, and we have direction of attack is Donetsk region in Novosilka sector, and also in the Bakhmut, which Russian tried to capture maybe for the 1 year, and they were unsuccessful because they destroyed cities, they captured air ruins. And now Ukrainian forces effectively and fast deliberate many territories there, but also Russian understand the tragedy of political situation. If you back Bakhmut, ruins of Bakhmut to Ukraine, then they will have very big political problems. They get Bakhmut with a very big casualties. We can say that Wagner, private military corps, but it's not private because I understand it's totally connected with the Russian some special agency, GRU, FSB, and Wagner's, by the words of Prigozhin, gang leader of Wagner, take it very big, huge casualties. And they captured Bakhmut, and now Ukrainians fast take it back. So they send some professional troops to prevent our too fast counteroffensive operation on Bakhmut. And the only one direction where the Russians still trying to make attack is only sector of Lugansk. It's the north of Ukraine, northeast. And they have was two directions. First, to the city of Slavyansk, big city in Kramatorsk, so-called Liman direction. And first is Kupiansk direction, closest to the city of Kharkiv. No, not closest, they cannot go to Kharkiv, but vector direction to the Kharkiv. And even now, when they started Kupiansk and Liman attack operation, only to prevent too big success for Ukrainian side in the south, in the Kherson, in the Zaporizhia, in the Donetsk. They want we send some reinforcement to the north and not to get too big some reserve to be used when we broke defense line on the Zaporizhia. But they unsuccessful in this mission, and you must understand, Russian used in the Liman and Kupiansk attack operation. In the first weeks, they used very huge, the last big group of forces, which is in the northeast Ukraine, occupied territories. And they used very fast their high priority units like Kantemirovska division, tank division, and it's famous from the some Soviet Union divisions. They use it in the first weeks, not getting a big results, but to make some psychological effect that, oh my God, Russians are again trying to make some advance, they still can attack. But now we can say that calmly that there is hard fights, because there is a big advantage to the Russian forces for the artillery, air force, infantry, armored vehicles in this direction. But their forests, they cannot use greatly their opportunity of some vehicles advantage. And but they have a big advantage, and they moving very slowly. And now they stopped for this period of time. They stopped from these two northern directions. They stopped to attack to the Liman direction because they have insufficient forces. They regroup attack forces from the Liman, go back to the from not closest front line to make reinforcement, to refresh, to resupply. And they saved only one big direction, and they reinforced it by some forces on Kupiansk. But what we need now to understand, to get the right point of view of this line and plan of future of this war. When they will have unsuccessful attack on Kupiansk, there will be no group of Russian forces which can make a big attack, not about 5 kilometers, 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer, and getting. They get territory, we counterattack, we get, but as we're talking about some strategical level, operational level attack, about some 20, 30 kilometers, their last chance is northeast Ukraine. And now they send their best troops, and they have not reached their mission points of this attack operation. We not enabled all our reserves. They not get too many villages burned and occupied territories. They cannot establish the mission of their last attack, which have only one purpose: to make a panic and to make to spread our forces from the front line on the Zaporizhia, as I said, on Donetsk and left bank of river Dnipro, Kherson. And so it's very hard now, of course, because it's war. It's maybe most disastrous war which see Europe from the end of Second World War. And you must understand the Ukrainian forces in Zaporizhia region. They attack with not multiple advantage under Russians in soldiers. We not have advantage twice in artillery. Russians have advantage in the air forces. About some assault aviations like attack helicopters and frontline bombers like Su-25, Frogfoot. And independent of these facts, we attack through the biggest minefields which maybe see even the world, we attack and we recover our territories, and Russian takes very big casualties, because July and June it was record of the Russian destroyed artillery systems and anti-aircraft systems. And only they're talking about tanks. Yes, we're not making a record because tanks over get to the back far from the front line, because two successful Ukrainian tank hunters, some drone attacks, some special forces. So yeah, in tanks they do not have, we do not get a record. But another way, we destroyed some specialized vehicles, like systems of detection anti-artillery fire, so-called counter-artillery systems. And we destroyed maybe the biggest part of them on the war. It's so-called complex zoopark. Zoo, as in English. And what we see now, Ukrainians still do not enable it. Reserve forces, and Russian do it. They send it to the Kherson, not even for the Zaporizhia. Ukrainians successfully, kilometer by kilometer, step by step, to liberate our territory. But the most important thing, Ukrainians make a very big casualties to Russian forces. We assault. When you assault in something, you, of course, you will get more losses than the enemy. But now, we see that Russian forces, which take defense, cannot resupply in the efficient way their defense forces. Ukrainians change a tactic. We now not attacking like some big armored group on one direction. We used all the directions of our counter-offensive operation to make panic and disorganization in Russian supplies, in Russian reinforcement, because they send forces to the Kherson and we attack on Zaporizhia. We attack from the Vasilievka, they bring their forces and we start attack to the Mariupol direction, or then on direction of Robotino. And Russia do not have opportunity to take as they need defense in this line. And what is the price? What is the price of this hard fightings? You now see we will have a map, and on the map you will see a Russian logistics in the south. And what is important this way? We have Chongar bridge. It was damaged few weeks before, as railroad, and also for the vehicles, automobiles. Another bridge only for vehicles in Genichisk also were damaged. And we have a Crimean bridge, which again and again begin hit by Ukrainian some missiles or some sea drones. And if you get destroyed two bridges in the Chongar and Genichisk, Russian all supplies, all repair bases, all ammunition bases will be disabled to resupply Russian force in the Group Army Dnieper and Group Army Vostok of the front line on the south Ukraine. And what is important in this direction, it was Donetsk and Ugledar fight. It was in autumn of 22, and Ukrainian forces with a very hard fighting, 72 Brigade, 79 Brigade, and another, make a Russian marine, make like a marine of the Dead Sea, because a Russian marine from the Vladivostok forest brigades were taking two big casualties. Even they have some protests against policy of their generals, because soldiers say that Russian generals use them like a cannon fodder, like a fresh mean to attack, and no result. Why they need to do it? Why it was very important to them? Because they want to push us out from the railroad which went from the Donetsk city to Volnovakha, and this railroad connect Russian supply with the Crimea and Russia. Now we have only one Crimean bridge with railroad, and then it go to all the forces. If Ukrainian forces in the Donetsk region, as I said, in the direction of Velika Novosilka to the Mariupol, now we get there 10 kilometers. If it will go south deeper, more or 10 or 20 kilometers, I know it's very good because last spring we fight there for the more than a month on this direction, and I look on my telephone how much is distance to the Mariupol from that. There was the closest distance 96 kilometers, and now we have get maybe distance from to the Mariupol from the first positions of Ukrainian infantry and Mechanized brigades is now 88. And we will get 80 kilometers to the Mariupol. There will be safe area to, not 80, but maybe 90 kilometers to the Mariupol. If you get, now it's 88 kilometers. If you go deeper, 50 or 20 kilometers, it will be safe area to use HIMARS multiple launching rocket systems to make attacks on Mariupol, and it will also will gain some control of our cannon artillery. It have maybe 20, 30, 40 kilometers. We will disrupt totally Russian logistics from Russia. There will be no railroad connection with Russia. There will be no road connection with Russia. And that's like what I call slowly fried chicken will be Crimea, because Crimea will be disrupted. We understand that Crimean bridge also is maybe only one good strike to the part of Russian bridge with the railroad, and they will enable to make supply for the 4 months, for 3 months, or maybe half a year, because in the winter and autumn when it's a storm in the sea, it's very difficult to repair this bridge. And we will get insufficient of Russian supply from the Crimean bridge. We will disrupt land logistics in the through the Mariupol, and all the Russian forces, I think for that period of time it will be 100,000 forces, 120,000 which will retreat from Zaporizhia and left bank of Dnieper to the Crimea, and they will get no food, no supply, no opportunity to repair vehicles, no opportunity to get some reinforcement of anti-aircraft systems, no opportunity to get any, not new, because they haven't produced any new tank. They only repair old Soviet shit, and even this old Soviet shit they will be unable to bring to Crimea, because to provide a support to Russian forces in Crimea, which will be fighting hard with Ukrainians who will advance from the Zaporizhia to direction of Chonhar, they will need tons, hundreds and thousands of tons of ammunition and supplies every day. And this mission will be they unable to provide by their some ships. And now we see Ukrainian command make a good some forecast and forecast joke for Russians, because Ukrainian command now damaged very deeply one of Russian US tankers. As Russians said, they bring tankers some explosives from Novorossiysk port and seaport. And now we very hardly damaged Russian big marine, big some transport ship. And we see that our command knows something big about future if they now appoint of strike some Russian ships. Because we understand, if there will be no bridge, Russian bridge in Crimea, if there will be no land logistics in the southern part of Zaporizhia, and will be no ships, cargo ships and marine ships, so Russians group of army in Crimea will be slowly fried chicken. So that is a very big mission. We will get a very hard job, but using our better commanding of troops, using our brave and motivation to throw out all the occupants, we do this miracle, and we will get to the middle of the autumn. We will get control under the land logistics with Russia. From the Rostov, Russia, to the Crimea, we will disrupt their logistics in southern Zaporizhia region in the autumn, and I think for this time or later they will be disrupt Russian Crimea. And we will do this mission, and we will cause a great tragedy to Russia. They will have a big problem since Crimea. So this is a reason why I wanted to tell it to you, because you heard about journalists, you heard about, oh, it's terrible, Ukraine can't, why, what will be next, The next, you will see. And as called Ukrainian General Staff Leader, nobody can stop me in my will to deliberate my country. And this is not about proclamation, this is about cold working plan, because all plans of our command, which were published as we're talking General Staff or Ministry of Defense, or all these plans about that we throw out Russians from the capital of Ukraine, then we throw out them their plans to capture all the Donetsk region, and now we we deliberated Kharkiv region, we deliberated Kherson, we stopped Russian big offensive operation in Bakhmut. They were success, but success for too much casualties, and they stopped. But Ukrainians now are not stopped. We advance, we attack on more directions than whole Russian army. And you must see a very interesting story. When it was Russian uprising of Prigozhin, there were no heavy forces in Russia, inside Russia, no heavy forces, because even Russian police must stop in the Prigozhin, and even from the Lugansk region were replaced to defend Moscow some elite airborne troops. There were no free available forces in Russia to stop Prigozhin's gang. So it's a reality. We no need to think, have Russia some big reserve, have Russia some fresh, strong forces inside Russia who can help them. They don't have, because even to stop Prigozhin's uprising, they regroup forces from the front line, and they go to fight some mobilized soldiers in Moscow and police, and 80% of Russian police in Moscow do not go on their work. They were scared. So Russians do not have powerful reserves. Russians cannot stop our advance operation. Russia cannot stop deliberating of southern Ukraine. Russia cannot defend and protect Crimean bridge. And we will get success of our operation. It will be bloody mess. And we pay a big and very big price for it. Especially paid because we have insufficient ammo, insufficient vehicles, insufficient air force to provide effective support of our land operation. But we do it with measures which we have, because we understand when the Russians are blooding, Russia are panic, they cannot be success in their missions of so-called special military operations. They cannot be success in defending their now positions, which now occupied. We have very hard fighting, but we understand now it's a good opportunity to fight, not to let Russia to regroup, not to let Russia to train new forces, not to let Russia to have some diplomatic games with the Chinese, with Iran, with some another countries to regroup their forces. Now it's time to beat occupants. It's time to burn ghost of communism. And if you will not do it, you must understand. In first months of war, Russians use people from occupied Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast regions like a cannon fodder. They send in attack like in the Second World War by Stalin, with insufficient ammo, insufficient medicine, with bad and old rifles. It was rifles from the times of regimes of Russian Tsars. It's a Mosinka rifle. It's from the 19th century, and it was used in First World War. These rifles were given to the militants of occupied republics, as they called Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast of Ukraine. And they send them in first line to die, and they make military genocide, because even people who they occupied, they send to die for Russia. And if Ukraine will lose, if you will not fight in the last year, in the previous year, or now, you understand, all the Ukrainians, firstly, will be used like a cannon fodder, like assault meat for the Russians. Then they will send people of previously occupied Donetsk and Lugansk regions, and only then will go Russian forces. And if they occupied Ukraine, they will get 10 millions of cannon fodder, because they will get imprisoned all Ukrainian men, then make them free and enlisted to some assault troops, and they will send to attack. Who don't want to be sent to, who don't go to attack, will be killed, like Russia now killed their prisoners, who used like a cannon fodder. So now they use it as prisoners, imprisoned men, to go in first way to attack Ukrainian position. If Ukraine will lose, Russia attacked Europe using Ukrainian men before the Russian prisoners. So you must understand that we are not fighting our war, and you are not providing support to Ukraine because it's far for the democracy, it's far for some justice. It's fighting for your security, because if Ukraine will fail, Russia will become stronger. And also Chinese understand that Russia became stronger, and Western countries lose. They lose allied country, and this allied country become enemy country, because Russia will use all our potential, all our men to make their forces more powerful. And we understand the next countries will be Balkan countries, and Russia now are not hiding their idea to fight these countries, to make some aggression. And we understand next will be, after Balkan countries, will be Poland. And you don't know, you don't remember, but in 2017 it was trying to make some uprising and anti-government uprising in Montenegro. It was unsuccessful because their special forces provide successful counterintelligence operation and stop these mercenaries. But they want to establish Balkans. They want to establish Balkans in previous years. They want to attack Baltic countries. They already attack Ukraine. They already attack Georgia. And now you see that Georgia is an unhappy country because it's occupied by some pro-Russian oligarchy. So it's not about Ukrainian story. It's a story about some continental security, it's continental safe. It's a story about providing a normal way of life and providing a geopolitical and economical interest of the Western world and of the whole Europe. Because if Russia will be success in Ukraine, you also must understand China will make their aggressive plans of some economic colonization of Europe. They will resume it. Now they are stopped because war in Ukraine changed everything. So it's very deep story how to look on Ukrainian fight. And Ukrainians do not ask you to fight. We are very proud of every European man and American man and Australian man and even Japan man who came here to fight for our freedom, to fight with the ghost of communism, with this bribe mafian regime of Lubyanka and Kremlin. And we are proud that many, even the very rich and very famous in Poland, for example, men came to fight and died for the Europe, fighting with the Russians crime gangs in Ukraine. We know many British men who died fighting for Ukraine and fighting against Russian imperialism. But we cannot ask you to go here to fight. We ask you to provide us weapons, and this is your security, and this is our chance not to win this war because we will win it. This is chance to win it faster, because as faster we will deal with it, then faster and more big will be crisis in Russia, and Putin's regime will fall down, and we can make some diplomatic talks with Russia. Because if now we stop fighting, we go to the some peace process, Russia have only one idea now of Putin's Russia. They have no another way to get chance to hold control of Russia by the model of successful imperialism. So if you wanna to play in peace, you will get a much more bigger war, and not in Ukraine. But now we are not talking about peace. We are talking about justice. Peace is not a question when there is no war. Peace is a question where there is no Putin's crime gang in Moscow. And Ukrainian defense forces provide this opportunity to all civilized world. So now you know the situation inside of Ukraine. You now know not some propaganda. You are not, because many of my friends, many of my old friends, brave people, Ukrainian nationalists, fight in the previous weeks in the Zaporizhia region. So I know the price of this war. My brother died in first days of defending of capital of Ukraine. Many of my friends died. People who I know for many years, many of them came back from some Western countries and stay fighting and dying for our land. So I'm not talking about some propaganda. I'm talking that we have strict, realistic and very hard plan. And we need your support to provide it more easier and faster and get more advantages to stop this war by winning it in easy way. Thank you for attention. If you think I am mistaken in something, please write down. I can answer any question, because this is not a propaganda. I am talking now public information. I am talking out the things which I read from the Russian soldiers. So you can bring me any question and I will answer you. And if you think this information was important to understand what is now acting in Ukraine, you can spread it out. I will be very happy that you to do it, because I hope that more people will know the hard but realistic situation and perspectives of this war in closest months. Thank you for your attention.